a short presentation that I thought I would share with you, but before I do, given that there are some people I've not met networking with through business before, I thought I'd just give you a quick introduction as to me. So I run a business called Shrewd PR. We're based in just north of Bedford. I've been a PR consultant for the last 16 years, and prior to that I worked in London agency, and my experience basically covers everything from product launches. I've done everything from fashion through to champagne houses and property, but also in the last probably 10 years done a lot more B2B, helping businesses to do their business development through their PR and their communications. Worked with several franchise businesses to actually help them with their franchise recruitment in terms of generating press coverage that helps to gain interest about what they're doing, and also done a lot of sort of product support and general product placement type campaigns. So really have a very broad brush experience, and I'm pretty much able to give advice on all sort of sectors from there, if that helps from there. So I'm just going to try and share my screen with you, and hopefully we can launch into that. There we go. So, come on. There we go. Okay. So I thought what we'd do was actually start with a definition, because I'm aware that there can be a lot of confusion between what PR, a confusion in understanding what PR actually is and where it fits within marketing and advertising. So PR is about reputation, and it's about managing the reputation of your business. And as that, you are doing that through various methods. That's using paid for methods such as, not paid for methods, using methods such as broadcast media, online, blogs, social media, and print. Okay, and the idea and the key is to get your reputation out there, your key messages out there, and you build that word of mouth value for your business. Okay, it's a vital part of your marketing strategy, because it's actually where you communicate to your public, basically, and it's about how you build that relationship with people. Advertising is what you pay for, whereas publicity is what you pray for. So have that in mind. Many people, I thought I'd sort of use this image to help people sort of work out where public relations fits. If you think of marketing for your business as an umbrella, as the fabric that goes over your umbrella, public relations is one of the spokes, and there are a variety of other tools that you can use within your marketing. So you might have advertising, you might have direct marketing, so in terms of news, email newsletters, that sort of thing. You might have your social media, you might have people going out doing sales and promotions for you, that type of thing, basically. So it's one spoke within a wider communication policy for you. It's also important to remember that PR is below the line. So you're not actually paying for the press coverage that appears or the TV interview that you get. And therefore, it is perceived to have more value. And it's perceived to have more value because the broadcaster or the newspaper or the magazine has got to believe that your story is of value to their viewers or their readers. Okay, so you can see where the sort of the influence starts to come in. It's the fact that you have to persuade that journalist in the first instance that what you've actually got to say is of value, and that you are saying something that their readers are going to want to hear. Okay, and it differs from advertising in the fact that advertising is above the line. You pay for your space. So if you book half a page in the Sun, for example, you have total control over the images that are used, the messages that are used. Whereas if the Sun writes half a page article on you, you might have sold them in the story in the first place, but the spin they put on it will be theirs. And there isn't a huge amount that you can do to influence or steer them, providing you've provided them with all the facts. How they then choose to write about it will depend on their in-house style. So you have to be a little bit careful within that, but that comes with knowledge, it comes with experience, and it comes with sort of making sure that your press release is fact-based, basically. Okay, so if we dig a little deeper into the definition I put up earlier, if we think about public relations about being evolving, looking after your reputation, it's more than just a social media post or a TV appearance. It's about that all-important first impression that you make when you meet people. It's the interactions you have with your clients, but it's also the interactions that your team have with them. It's no good having a great key message if your sales team aren't actually delivering the same message as you. So you need to be consistent. It's also about what's written about you. It's about your customer service, and it's those word of mouth recommendations. So there's a lot more to it than simply a piece of written press coverage or a social media post or a blog. And it covers everything from that perspective. As a discipline, we're talking about communication, and we're talking about what we're saying, how we're saying it, who we're saying it to, and which channels we are using. And depending on the nature of your business and depending on the nature of your story, all those will change slightly. So if we take things, so if you are a local business, one of your key channels will probably be local newspapers, local broadcast media, local social media platforms. However, there is every likelihood that you might also have a product or service that you could actually get out to people nationally. So you might decide that if you have got a fantastic homes and interiors product, you could go and run a campaign promoting yourself as the creator of, for example, Phil, if your pictures are going really, really well and you want to get your word out there.
Eleanor's just frozen just as she was about to tell me some key points.
Oh no, okay, right, I will recap.
Please.
I was going to say, based on the fact that you're a photographer, okay, your images that you're working on currently and you're making available as a canvas, you could obviously talk to your local media about that, but you could also decide that actually Ideal Home or House and Garden are doing a feature on wall art. So actually your products could be suitable to go and approach a national magazine for, and you could promote yourself in that way. You could therefore then get orders or interest and people connecting with you from across the country rather than just within 50 miles of Northampton, for example. Yeah. So there are various things to consider, and obviously you need to think about the logistics of doing that. It's all very well, but if you can't fulfill anything or you struggle, then actually it's a slight sort of double sort of a cross-edged sword, isn't it, really, from that side of things. The other thing you need to think about in terms of your the channels that you use are, who are you trying to educate about your product? What age are they? What gender are they? And what are they interested in? Because there are a whole plethora of channels out there, both online and also print and broadcast, that you can get your messages out to. And you can, but what you need to do is you need to research them, and you need to understand which appropriate channels might be the right ones for you. And you can do that by doing Google searches. You can do that by buying into media lists and things like that, or you can do that by working with a freelancer or an agency or whatever. So if you do decide that your business has got a PR story, or you're going to do some PR for your business, it needs to fit within your marketing plan. You need to have a clear set of goals. You need to think about which types of media are potentially going to be interested in your story. What supporting documents, collateral do you have? The likelihood is, for example, If you're going to try and get something onto your local news stuff, you might well have to have some video footage that you can send in, some audio if you're going to radio. You'll certainly need images if you're going to get something into a magazine, for example. And you then need to think about how you might measure your results. Whilst you might want to use your PR to drive your sales, that doesn't necessarily follow. However, what you can check are the number of hits to a particular landing page on your website. You might suddenly find your phone is ringing off the hook. You might suddenly find that your Facebook followers jump by 50%. Again, as a result of the fact that a couple of pieces of coverage have started to increase your awareness, and therefore people are starting to find their way and navigate to you. Before you send out a story, you are going to have to think about your news story. Now, you might decide you're going to put a press release together, or you might decide you're going to put together a carefully crafted email. But either way, you're going to need to have some key information, and your information needs to cover off the 5 W's. So the who, so this is your business, your brand, your employees, for example. The what, and I've used a couple of examples to try and make it a little bit more obvious for everybody. So your what could be the fact that you're a local business and you've decided to make scrubs for the NHS. It might be that you've got a new product launch, or that there's a particular service that you're offering. The where, that's either your local area, particularly relevant if you are trying to drum up local press interest for you. It's no good if you are based in Daventry and trying to contact the Northampton Chronicle. They're unlikely to be interested in it. Similarly, if you're in Northampton, Milton Keynes Citizen isn't likely to necessarily cover your story. However, if you can find yourself a link to get yourselves into either of those cities, so it could be that you've got particular staff working in that area that are helping you, but you need to find that link if you're going to go down a very sort of local based story. When, it's either now or a date in the future, and the why. And this needs to be the strongest bit, and it will link back to the who. And the why is the nugget that you're going to want to get to whet your journalist's appetite, and they're going to want to say, yep, that's exactly what we're looking for, and that's exactly what our readers are going to want to learn more about. So we could, for example, I mean, I guess an example of somebody within the business community group, if you think about the fact that Bob Allen has managed to take his osteopathy business online, okay, and he's also managed to get clients from New York to come and be a client of his and give a service. And so it's likely that the local Northampton press, be that radio, be that magazines, whatever, are going to be interested in that type of story. It's how he has adapted, but also he can prove that his adaptation has worked because it has brought him business. So having got your press release, now comes the fun bit, and it's the challenging bit, but it's the bit that actually, when it works and when you do manage to achieve it, it's that brings you that feel-good factor. So it's the selling in of your story. In the current climate, my experience is that local newspapers and local media outlets are looking for positive stories, and they're looking for the good news stories about how business is helping their local community. That could be by supporting key workers, fundraising for local charities. It's got to be local, as we said before. Okay, it could, for example, be that you've won a new order, which means you're taking on new staff. It could be that you've got an employee running the London Marathon dressed as a dinosaur. As you can see, I've trying to give you some examples as to the sorts of things that you could potentially use or think about and brainstorm within your organisations or together that could potentially bring you the possibilities of press coverage. I mean, for Phil, for example, also your involvement could also be to make sure that you've got really excellent photos to back up any other businesses' stories, and that's a really valuable asset that most PR is going to need some sort of photographic collateral, be that to go onto a blog or into a printed piece of publication. Okay, I thought I'd spend the next couple of slides just giving you a little bit of a taster as to the sorts of coverage that I've managed to secure for clients. This is a client of mine, is Hire a Hubby. They are a franchise property maintenance and DIY business. We were approached by The Sun last year, okay, based on the fact that one of the key messages that we've been trying to get out about Hire a Hubby is that in these modern times, we're all, well, up until lockdown anyway, we're all time poor, cash rich. We've got, and we don't all necessarily have the skills to be able to do those basic DIY and property maintenance things around our homes. So The Sun came back to us and basically said, well, okay, can I have a hubby come to my house and we can do various odd jobs around it? And we had a piece that appeared in the fabulous section of The Sun. Yes, it was somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but we knew that there was the likelihood that it was going to be slightly based on that, on the basis that we knew The Sun and their journalistic criteria. But we got our key messages across really well. We also had a question from the journalist that when she asked for a series of background questions while we were working through it, and one of which could have landed us in slightly negative field, but we were able to manage that quite carefully. She picked up on the fact that we have the name Hubby in our company name, and she was sort of asking, okay, well, are your franchisees only men? And we were able to turn around and say, actually, no, we welcome everybody. We have female franchisees, and we were able to prove it and back that up. And by presenting her with the evidence, we diffused that potential for negativity. And on the back of it, yes, we had this piece, but it actually generated an increased number of hits to the website, an increased number of job inquiries, and also an increased number of franchise inquiries. So depending on the nature of your business, depending on your story, it is well worth seeing what you can do from a national perspective. It needs to be carefully managed, it needs to be very carefully thought through, but it can be a very good way of increasing that all-important awareness and potentially reputation for your business. If you're more product focused or service focused, but you're still got the ability to target people across the United Kingdom, then actually working with some of the consumer media is also a really good way of getting your brand out there. The first three up here, I don't know whether you can, whoops, hang on, sorry. I don't know whether you can see. So these three pieces are for a client of ours called Eddington's. Now they are a kitchen gadget distributor and wholesaler. And the press coverage that we generated for them was to help as part of their retailer support initiative. So we would work with the consumer press, we would get particular products that they wanted us to work on into a selection of consumer media. And it benefited them in the way that the fact that each piece of coverage had a link to a particular stockist with a telephone number or a website. So they were using it as part of their retailer support initiative. So again, Phil, and I'm picking on you because I know you've potentially got a product rather than anybody else, is that, and in fact Charles actually probably too, so some of your imagery and things like that, is that if you've got a showcase of product that is available online, then going to magazines like this is a good way of potentially getting word out about your product. Just make sure that you have a link back to your website so that if somebody reads about you in Country Homes and Interiors, they can then go and visit you online and actually buy the product that they're seeing. Or if it's a telephone, it's easier. But I would just just make sure that it's there. You will usually know that they're going to feature you because their sub-editor will call you and will want to make sure that they've got the right image and also have got the right stockist details for you. There are occasions where the sub-editor gets it wrong, but 99.9% of the time it works, and goes from there. If you've got a service, now the three pieces down here are for Colour Me Beautiful, the image consultant. They were a client for the best part of 14 years. And we worked with them on a variety of levels. They had a makeup sector, so we were able to run fairly generic product placement campaigns. We would work with the beauty teams, finding out what the key colours of the season were and making sure that our key colour palettes were sent out, and we'd get reviewed and we'd get little snippets in magazines like this. What we also did was that because they had a service, they ran colour consultations and style consultations, we spoke to magazines and got their journalists to actually experience the Colour Me Beautiful service. And that involved them having consultations and learning more about the service in doing that. I mean, I guess one of the biggest coups I managed to achieve whilst we were working for them was that we managed to get the Times fashion desk to do a double page spread based on a colour party that we had, and we sent one of our consultants into the Times to do that. Now, the same journalist, the head of Times Fashion, 2 years previously had written a really scathing article in the Times about style consultants and about how they were all hung up in the 80s. And we managed to completely educate them, completely change their mind, and we ended up with a double page spread. But again, as I'm saying, it's about thinking about where you might be able to go. And I think Accent was actually a I think it was to do with PA, so it was about personal branding and things like that. That was the idea within the story. And then we've got tips on choosing underwear to suit body shape and colour. Again, that was just showing the breadth of experience. So again, the photographers amongst you, you might possibly have tips on what to think about when having a self-portrait, or if you're off to a wedding, how to stand appropriately and things like that. I don't know enough about Elizabeth or Marcus as to what areas of your expertise as to how we might be able to help you from that perspective. But it's about thinking about the other avenues that you might have and the other ways in which you can be of help and of service that you can then build your reputation and potentially generate your press coverage. A very important sector now is social media, and I don't just mean Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I mean the blogging community, and there are an awful lot of influencers out there who write regular blogs, and that there are opportunities for businesses to work with them. But as with everything, don't go to them cold. Make sure you've actually done some research, so you've followed them, you've seen what they're doing, and think about the angle that you might have, think about what you might have to offer that could benefit them and their readers. Be prepared to offer your product or service for review. Some of them are starting to charge. I personally, in the years that I've been working, we've never gone down a paid for influencer type route. However, they can be beneficial, and all I would say is make sure that you do your due diligence, make sure that you understand what their facts and figures are telling you, and not just the sort of vanity numbers of they have 20,000 followers. You need to make sure that they're actually relevant to your target market. So if the 20,000 people are 10 or 15-year-olds, and you've got a product that you're aiming to market to 30-year-olds, then obviously they're not going to be relevant to you. And it doesn't matter how much money you pay them, you're not going to target your audience. In terms of, it's important that from a blog perspective, you encourage and ask for a link back to your website. In the same way that you would be able to get a name check for your products in a piece of printed press, or you'd get a little credit that appears on a broadcast piece, Bloggers, and most bloggers worth their salt, will be more than happy to include one outbound link back to your website. And it's those that are really good for your website SEO. And it also means that their individual followers, if they're particularly interested in your product, can go and find out more and actually can come to you. And that's what you want. You want the blogger's influence on their readers to lead to potential people coming and finding you and wanting to learn more. Okay. I have found that working with bloggers are particularly useful at key times of year. I run regular gifting campaigns covering Christmas, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, etc. But there are also other opportunities that you can do. I have a client that we're currently working on from a food and drink perspective, and we're looking at doing a whole range of healthy eating with some of their Italian oils and vinegars. So again, it's about thinking about who that market is, but where that might potentially lead. So we thought we might sort of recap and have a few tips for success. So preparation is key. Make sure you know the media that you're going to try and target. Be sure of your story. Okay, journalists don't have a huge amount of time. You'll be, I mean, if you're able to speak to your journalist and spend 2 to 3 minutes talking with them, then you're doing well. So make sure you know what it is you're trying to get across, and do it as succinctly as you can. If you're leaving voicemails, make sure that you leave a telephone number so people can follow up with you. Don't forget to follow up. In my experience, it takes 2 to 3 phone calls to actually get your coverage to appear. Also think about the fact that a local newspaper usually works at least a week in advance. So if you go and talk to them on a Monday, your piece of press coverage probably won't appear until the following Thursday. Okay, they'll usually go to press Tuesday, Wednesday for print for publication on the Thursday. So you've probably got a week to 10 days lead time by the time of your first approach to actually getting your story out there. Broadcast is faster, but again, that really depends on the nature of your story and quite how it fits within their timescales and things. Okay, when you do follow up, don't be persistent, but don't be rude. There's that sort of fine line. We've all had our sort of cold call salesman coming in and things like that. So bear in mind that your call to a journalist is similar in terms of how you might be viewed. Do what you can to help. So offer images, products, quotes, interviews. But if they ask for further information, make sure that you do follow up and make sure that you send it to them. So if they ask for half a dozen high-res images, make sure that you send them over. Make sure that if you are sending images, make sure that you have credited them appropriately. So in the file, you've got the information so that they know that's from Charles Jones, the name of your company, and potentially some of the people who are in it. If you get asked a question during the follow-up that you don't immediately know the answer to, don't be afraid to admit that. Offer to come back to them with that information. Just make sure that you go and bring them that information when they ask you for it, okay? They don't expect everybody to have all the answers, but just make a note of what you've been asked and make sure you do that follow-up. Consistency of message, as we said at the very beginning, it's not just what you are saying, it's what all the members of your team are saying, but it's also putting out the same message across all your communication channels. So across your website, across your blog, across your LinkedIn, your Instagram, your Facebook, etc. Treat everything as being on the record, okay? And by that I mean don't swear, don't be rude, don't make an off-the-cuff remark. You don't want the Gerald Ratner moment, okay?
Dawn French springs to mind as well.
Sorry, Phil, I didn't catch that.
The Dawn French series that was on recently.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. So yeah, so just, I mean, in the same way that you're having that professional conversation with somebody, they're not necessarily your friend, and whatever you do say could be used in print against you potentially. Okay. If you do get a piece of coverage, that could be a nice blog, it could be a nice little bit on the East of England news, drop the journalist a thank you, actually. And the reason I say that is you're not being sycophantic. It actually helps to build that relationship with that journalist. And it's all about relationship building, and you'll never know where that thank you might lead you. Often we've had experiences where we've sold in an initial story, and then 3 or 4 months later, something else has cropped up. Journalists have come back and said, oh, we're doing this. Would your client be interested in? Could I have a spokesman on this sort of thing? Okay, so it's starting to build that relationship. Okay. Also, don't be afraid to shout about your fantastic press coverage. Tag them in your social media. If there are links that BBC News, for example, have shared on their Facebook page, reshare them on yours. You might as well bask in the reflected glory. You've done all the hard work. Your name is up in lights. You might as well get that warm, fuzzy feeling. What not to do? Don't forget to proofread your media releases, okay? Mistakes happen. I remember years and years ago, we were working for Hagar Menswear. They'd just launched a golfing range. We did an advert and some editorial in one of the golfing magazines. And the advert had been checked by 4 people. Myself was one of them, and we didn't realise that we transposed one of the numbers in the telephone number. And there was nothing we could do about it. The website was there, thankfully, but these things happen. But the more people that have eyes on it, the better, okay? Don't bombard everybody with your press release, okay? It's a bit like spamming people. Don't do that. Try and be as niche and as targeted as you possibly can be. Don't forget to follow up, because also, if you think about it, that most journalists have several news stories landing on their desks at any one time. You need to try and ensure that yours is front of memory. So actually a well-considered, thought-through follow-up is well worth doing. And lastly, don't be rude. Journalists can be on press deadline. They can be having a bad day. It doesn't matter how they respond to you. You are your company's brand ambassador, and you need to keep your cool no matter what comes back at you the other way. Okay. So there we are. So does anybody have any questions? Shall I, if I unshare this, then we can, there we go. Perfect.
Okay, guys, if you've got anything for Eleanor, she's live and at your disposal. So
indeed, I'd happily help.
So just unmute yourselves and use and abuse it as you see fit.
Eleanor,
Yes.
regarding a press release to your niche marketplace, whichever one you've decided that is, or the market that you're going after. These days of electronic communication, do journalists get bombarded by emails, and is a paper-based approach a good idea in the forefront as it'll land on their desk and create an impact?
That's a very good question. I send all of mine out now via email. I haven't sent a paper press release out in probably 5 or 6 years. In your shoes, what I would do is I would pick up the phone, make an introductory phone call first of all. Okay. Yeah. So for example, it might be that you're calling the Daventry Express. And it's either potentially going to speak to somebody who was on their business desk, or it might be that you're looking for a local reporter, depending on the nature of your story. Okay. Yeah. But pick up the phone to them, find out who the best person is to send that initial email to, then send your press release. I would, in this day and age, I would probably have gone for either a PDF or a Word document. If you're doing a PDF, I'd say that if you're including images within your press release, okay, because also that means that depending on what PC or Mac they're using to open it, in a PDF, your press release will appear exactly as you want it to, whereas with a Word document things can be slightly skewed. So I'd make sure that you send it with in that format. Make sure that at the bottom of your press release you've got notes to editors, so a little bit of company detail, who they can contact for further information, whether there's visuals, samples for offer, whether there are spokespeople available for comment, contact details, and then you can also attach possibly some low-res JPEGs with it as well. So the images that you've got in your press release, I would also attach onto that. Make low-res to begin with. Obviously, if they're copyrighted, so if your images, if you need them to credit and to give you a copyright, okay, then you need to also make that clear within your notes to editors. Yeah. And you also need to make sure that that is included in any file information that you send over.
Absolutely, yeah, and the metadata, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Any other questions?
Yeah, hi, Eleanor.
Hi, Mark.
Just wondering what your view is on the effectiveness now of the printed media as opposed to digital.
I think it depends on where. It depends what you mean by printed media. I mean, things like your trade publications, so your HR Week and those sorts of things, they're still doing big print runs. PR Week is still doing that. So if you are working with and want to be, if you want to position yourself as an authority within your particular field and you are speaking to your peers, then definitely potentially something that appears within your printed media is fine. National newspapers, again, I think there is still a place for that. People do still go out and buy that, and what often happens is that something that appears in print will also appear on their online. Local press has gone through massive change. I mean, even in the last sort of 5 years, it's changed dramatically. There's an awful lot of online stuff currently. I think with that you need to be very careful. What you'll often be persuaded to do is do advertorials to get your message across. I would try and steer clear away from those, because I've not found that running advertorials within local media have necessarily brought the clients that I've worked with the results that they're looking for. A local magazine that is hand delivered through your local through your letterbox that has a very particular audience, but that is relevant to your target market, can work brilliantly. So I think it very much depends on the nature of your business, which publication you're trying to achieve. Read between the lines. Take any salesman advertising pack with a pinch of salt, and sort of think about that. And actually, don't be afraid to ask really pertinent questions as to where did you get that information? How can you prove it? Because if you're going to spend the time and energy trying to get into that, you need to know that they are really where they need to be. So I think it can work. I think it depends on what type of print media you are talking about and you are going to go and approach. If that helps.
Yes, thank you.